or on a tennis court. They've seen him wilt under the pressure. But will he wilt on the grass? He's the reigning defending champion at Wimbledon, and he's the odds-on favourite. 1.62 is Jannik Sinner, and second favourite Novak Djokovic at 7s, Sasha Zverev at 12s, and Taylor Fritz and Ben Shelton at 15s. So that's what we have to go with. It's going to be interesting to see how we both have this draw going. Obviously, Djokovic being on the same side as Jannik Sinner.
He is 39 years old. He just lost a 5-hour war to a teenager half his age. And somehow, Novak Djokovic wants you to believe that losing was the best thing that could have happened to him. Sounds backwards, right? But stick with this, because the more you dig into what Djokovic actually said, the more sense it starts to make. Let's rewind a month. Roland Garros. Djokovic walks into the third round and runs into 19-year-old Joao Fonseca, a kid who hits the ball like he is trying to break it in half. What follows is one of the wildest matches of the season. 4 hours and 53 minutes on court. 5 brutal sets. Djokovic up 2-0, looking every bit like the man chasing tennis history. Then Fonseca does something almost nobody his age has managed against Djokovic at a Grand Slam. He claws all the way back. 6-3, 7-5, 7-5. Djokovic, who had never lost to a teenager at a major in 18 previous attempts, finally falls. Here is the part that made every headline. That loss came in the same tournament where Jannik Sinner, the world number 1, collapsed against Juan Manuel Cerundolo while battling brutal heat and his own struggling body. Carlos Alcaraz was not even there, sidelined with a wrist injury. For one strange, wide-open week, the road to a record-breaking 25th Grand Slam title was sitting right there for Djokovic. No Sinner blocking the path. No Alcaraz waiting either. Just him and a half-empty bracket of players who had never won a major. Then the kid from Rio de Janeiro went and ruined the entire script. So you would expect Djokovic to be haunted by a missed opportunity like that. Instead, when he sat down to talk about it ahead of Wimbledon, he sounded almost completely at peace, like a man who had already figured out how this story was supposed to end. Roland Garros was physically very draining, demanding, he said. The 3 matches that I played, all of them went 4 hours. But I'm proud of the effort. I lost in the third round against a 20 years younger opponent. I fought until the end in the 5 sets. Of course, not the result I was looking for, but the effort was there. That is not the language of a man in quiet denial. That is the language of a man who had already written off Paris as a stepping stone toward something bigger. Because here is what most people missed in the moment. Djokovic was coming off a shoulder injury that had kept him sidelined from the tour for weeks. He had almost no real match play heading into Roland Garros. By his own admission, asking his body to win 7 best-of-5 matches in that condition, with barely any rhythm built up beforehand, might have simply been too much to ask of a 39-year-old. Win or lose, the toll, there was always going to be brutal. I knew not having any matches going pretty much straight into Roland Garros was going to be quite difficult, maybe too big of a challenge for me at the moment, he explained. That's what happened. But I knew that was going to give me a bit more time to get myself prepared for Wimbledon. In other words, Paris was never the real target. Wimbledon was always going to be the true fight, and now it has finally arrived. Here is why that matters so much. Djokovic has won Wimbledon 7 times. Since 2018, he has lost on center court exactly twice, and only ever to 2 men. Carlos Alcaraz, who beat him in the finals of both 2023 and 2024, and is now missing this tournament because of that lingering wrist injury. And Jannik Sinner, who beat him in straight sets in last year's semifinal and returns as the reigning defending champion. Take Alcaraz out of the equation, and the only man standing between Djokovic and familiar grass court magic is Sinner himself. Djokovic already showed us this year exactly what he can still do to him. Remember the Australian Open semifinal in January? Djokovic took Sinner down on one of the biggest stages in the sport, reminding everyone this rivalry is nowhere near as settled as people assume. The two have now been drawn into the same half at Wimbledon, meaning if both holds serve, we get that semifinal rematch all over again. Except this time, there is no Alcaraz lurking in the final to stop whoever survives. Meanwhile, the other half of the draw tells a completely different story. Alexander Zverev finally broke through and won his first Grand Slam title at Roland Garros, and now arrives carrying the second seed. Ben Shelton and Taylor Fritz both have the games to make a serious run too. Whoever climbs out of that side will be stepping into their very first Wimbledon final. No experience, no safety net, just raw nerve. And then there is Sinner, who almost did not make it here looking anything close to favorite. What happened at Roland Garros was brutal to watch. After a 30-match winning streak, after dominating the entire clay season, Sinner physically broke down against Cerundolo in the heat, dealing with illness and a body that simply stopped cooperating. It was the kind of collapse that makes you wonder if it could happen again. So Sinner's team went straight back to work. Medical tests, real adjustments to his preparation, a deliberate decision to put him through long training sessions in hot, punishing conditions, almost simulating the worst-case scenario, so his body would never be caught off guard twice. "We are doing as much as we can," Sinner said. "I'm very happy with the work we did in the last 2.5 weeks. I feel well prepared." There is even a strange twist of luck working in his favor. London had been baking under a brutal heat wave heading into the tournament, exactly the kind of heat that would have made everyone nervous about a repeat of Paris. But that heat wave is expected to finally break right as Sinner steps onto center court to open against Miomir Kekmanovic. He has also had real rest this time, calling it one of the best preparations he has had before a major in a long while. Which brings us back to Djokovic, seeded only 7th this year purely because of how few matches he has played, who has landed straight into the defending champion's half of the draw. He knows exactly what that means. He knows the calendar. He knows just how few of these chances he realistically has left at 39 years old. And when he talks about Wimbledon now, there is a noticeably different energy to it than there was in Paris. "I have a very good history in Wimbledon," he said. "That gives me a higher dose of confidence coming into the tournament. It has now been since the 2023 US Open, since Djokovic last lifted a Grand Slam trophy. 10 majors have come and gone since then, without a title. Even though he still fought his way into this year's Australian Open final, proof the competitive fire inside him has not gone anywhere. But grass has always been different for him. Shorter points, far less punishment on the body than the brutal grind of clay. A surface where his footwork, his balance, his uncanny ability to slide into a shot that should not even be reachable, still somehow looks like it belongs to a man half his actual age. Maybe that is exactly why Djokovic does not sound defeated by Fonseca at all. Maybe losing in Paris, as painful as it was in the moment, simply cleared his calendar and rested his body for the one tournament where the version of him that has dominated for 2 entire decades still reliably shows up. The question now is simple. Does that version of Djokovic still have one more legendary run left inside him? Or has the queue of hungry young contenders finally grown too long for him to